in Alaska now.
Put that story on the page just about the improvements in there. The people probably don't realize you're about to online.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. Making sure my chair is equal with everybody else's, because sometimes I look up here and some people are sitting.
I know.
Way else.
Yeah.
They're towering above everybody else.
Yeah, we're ready to go here. Okay, thank you for joining us for the Board of Commissioners meeting of Deschutes County at 9 a.m. Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. Happy first day of summer. First item on the agenda is Pledge Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don't see the cameras going, it says recess still. Next item on the agenda is citizen input. We have two requests to speak in the room at this time. So John Helion, is that it? Helion? Halen. Van Halen. There we go now.
Hello, commissioners. Good morning. I'm just going to read a letter that I had published in the bulletin. I'm here to advocate for the expansion of the number of county commissioners in Deschutes County. As our county grows and becomes more complex, the current number of commissioners may no longer be sufficient to effectively represent and serve our community. With the current 3 commissioners, there is a risk of decisions being made with a narrow perspective and a lack of diversity of thought and opinion. By expanding the number of commissioners, we can ensure that more voices are heard and represented in county decision-making processes. Moreover, as the county continues to experience rapid population growth, the workload and responsibility of the commissioners will likely increase. Expanding the number of commissioners will allow for a more efficient and effective use of resources, distributing the workload among more individuals, reducing the burden on each commissioner, and enabling them to focus on specific issues that are important to their constituents. In addition, with more commissioners, there will be more opportunities for individuals to run for office, leading to greater diversity and representation in our government. This, in turn, can inspire greater public engagement as more people feel invested in the process and the outcomes of county decision-making. While there may be concerns about the cost of expanding the number of commissioners, it is important to remember that this investment is ultimately in the best interest of our community. By increasing representation and sharing the workload, we can build a stronger, more inclusive county government that is better equipped to serve the needs of all of its residents. I strongly urge you to consider this proposal and take action to expand the number of county commissioners in Deschutes County. And I understand that you guys can put your own ballot measures on. I would encourage you to put that on the next ballot, please.
Thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I would like to follow that up and ask for us to consider at a future meeting whether the board would support moving forward with a home rule charter committee and potentially a ballot measure, or whether whether we wouldn't support that and people who are interested in this idea are going to have to do a citizen petition measure.
Thank you.
Could we put that on a future agenda?
As you're looking at me, Commissioner, I will.
So that would be, yeah, is there support for that?
Included on the agenda.
Any thoughts?
I would like it to be, Nick, part of our discussion in our meetings with you individually next week, if we're having those.
Yes, we'll have those next week on.
Okay.
on
Great.
Monday, so we can
Great.
discuss those individually. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing that to us. At this time, Ron Boozell.
Morning, commissioners. I'm Rondo. I've lived in Bend for over half my life. Today, I would like to if I may, remind everybody that can hear my voice today that people do not sell us our homes. Corporations do. And so I do want to let people know that if they don't know, July 1st, the home energy score that Bend has put into action. What it does is tell corporations that what we want as consumers and as residents and the larger community. And I think that's going to be a benefit. And I would like you, our county commissioners, to consider doing this at a county level as well. Thank you very much. Happy summer.
Thank you, Rondo.
Is there anyone else request to speak on any topic? And anybody online? Okay, so at this time, consent agenda.
I
Oh,
actually have a
please.
comment.
Okay.
I think it's incredibly important that I acknowledge 3 women that are responsible for Senate Bill 5506. That's the funding for Deschutes County Courthouse for $15 million. First of all, I want to extend my enormous appreciation to Senator Elizabeth Steiner for meeting with me a week ago, Monday morning, as she walked out of her Ways and Means Committee. On Saturday, I was told by Representative Breeze Iverson that I needed to get over to Salem and explain to them what our courthouse plans were. And if I didn't talk to Ways and Means, we might be in trouble. So I made a plan to go back to Salem. And fortunately, I took our budget member, Judy Trigo, with me. Judy just happened to be friends with Senator Steiner. And when Senator Steiner walked out of her Ways and Means meeting that she was chairing, she smiled and immediately said, "Hi, Judy." So our meeting went so well. And I told her the necessity, the need due to inflation and interest rates and our courthouse plans. We, according to legislation, we're asking, signed by all of our representatives, for 25 million. We didn't get 25 million, but the 15 million we did get, I'm extremely pleased with, but I'm extremely appreciative of Senator Steiner taking the moment as we walk down the hallway to acknowledge that Deschutes County definitely should and will be receiving significant funding for our courthouse. So I just want to thank her and thank Representative Breeze Iverson, and then the fact that Ms. Trigo had written a book about having your spouse have cancer when she was working in the legislature 9 years ago. And Senator Steiner is a MD and had proofed the book for her. So there was an incredible relationships there. And I was just at the right place at the right time. So I want to thank several women that really made a difference for the taxpayers of Deschutes County.
And thank you very much for jumping on that opportunity and making it work so well.
My husband is like, "You are driving to Salem again." But this
In
one,
addition to key members of the Ways and Means Committee, we should definitely also thank our full delegation of state representatives and state senators from Deschutes County who have worked very hard to tee this up for us over the last 4 or 5 months as well.
Wonderful.
yes, they have. All 7 of them, they wrote the letter asking for the 25. So definitely 15 is a big help.
And we'll have the budget discussions this afternoon. They are going to go through all of our districts and proposed approvals. So at this time, I do have one more request to speak, a citizen input. So Avery Grace. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Avery Grace. I worked for a long time in residential and transitional mental health, as well as public and private education. But I'm here speaking just as a resident of Deschutes County, but as someone who has direct experience working in the communities that are affected by the proposed camping codes. I want to bring forward, there was in the last commissioners meeting 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Chung brought forward questions about legality and the potential for legal contestation and what that would cost the county, and that being an important factor to consider as part of a comprehensive solution to being unhoused as opposed to temporary Band-Aid, types of approaches. But in reviewing the proposed codes at that time, it was very clear they're ineffective, like highly expensive, harmful and dangerous, inhumane and dehumanizing. It actually makes it harder to get out of being unhoused. From my own experience as a service provider and in the experience of others, all of us, as well as residents of Juniper Ridge, they report that sweeps of encampments have always led to a breakdown in service provider relationships. And so the approach, as well as the phased plan that has been offered by the county at this time, the timeline for that is 10 weeks. 10 weeks to connect folks to adequate resources, housing options, which arguably are not there, is highly unrealistic. And I would like to bring forward as well just a number of things, some of which have already been discussed. One was the case of Martin v. Boise, where the Supreme Court upheld the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. But I want to share some of the specific wording that I think is relevant to this situation. That case says, as long as there is no option of the Supreme Court ruling upheld that definitively, as long as there is no option of sleeping indoors, the government cannot criminalize indigent homeless people for sleeping outdoors on public property on the false premise that they had a choice in the matter. I would argue that in the absence of adequate and responsive housing alternatives, how will the proposed codes, as well as the proposed phase plan laid out by the Property Management and Health Services, not guarantee expensive and burdensome legal proceedings in regards to this ruling, as well as a few others, especially some Oregon state legislative statutes. So I'd like to share some of those with you. So for instance, ORS 431.001, and I'm happy to submit this information as well for your review. On the state and local administration of enforcement of public health laws, it says, quote, the Legislative Assembly of the State of Oregon finds and declares that each resident of this state is entitled to the basic public health services that are necessary to preserve life and health. The proposed camping codes exemplify the opposite of these findings. The state legislature and put forth in this.
This is a 3-minute testimony. I want to thank you very much.
Gotcha.
But please stay engaged. I mean, this
Will.
is the topic of the day.
Yeah.
And no matter which way we go, we're going to be touching something. And I'm we're kind of in a box. So please just follow the next couple agenda items. And this is exactly the topic.
I'm happy to submit. I understand it's very dense. I'm happy to submit all of the very specific state statutes that come into play in this situation. And I think it's worth your review.
Thank you.
For the time. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else for citizen input?
See a sheet to sign up, but I just have a quick.
Sure, please join us. You can sign it afterwards. Maybe we're out of blue sheets or maybe they're white today. I don't know. Yep, not a problem. There you go.
We can do it later.
Yep.
Thanks. Hi, Liz Goodrich, Redmond, Oregon. I'm just here to encourage you to, as you consider revising the code, to take into consideration that moving people does not solve the problem. And as I read through, it seems super heavy on the enforcement rather than having enforcement walk alongside relocation of our houseless neighbors. I work every Sunday out at a homeless camp in Redmond. And without a place to go, sweeping them, getting them off the property, regardless of how we feel about that, isn't going to help those folks. So I encourage you to pair enforcement with relocation to safe places for them. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, at this time, Consent agenda. We have about 9 items here today.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
I don't want to hold up the vote on the consent agenda, but I would like us at a later date to better understand how this funding from the state fire marshal under item number 3, complements, replaces, or expands existing funding for our natural resources office.
Great. Yeah, I mean, let's bring that to a work session and for review in a timely fashion, because it'll be great to see how those investments are happening.
Yeah, because there has been some discussion about, well, if we get this funding from the state fire marshal, we should shrink this amount of money that the county is contributing to various programs. And I think it's important to understand what each pot of money does and doesn't do so that we can make sure that we're not slipping backwards.
So there's been a motion and a second, and any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Adair.
Yes, I did want to comment and thank Maggie Kirby and Dale Crawford for serving on the Planning Commission. Thank you very, very much to them.
Yeah,
And
those are both full-time appointments.
Yes.
Or, 8 years is my point.
yes, so I want to acknowledge their service.
Okay, so you voted yes, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes also. So yeah, the letter that was provided in the packet was slightly edited. Instead of saying we're sorry for your not serving, it's going to say thank you for your service. So it's a slight edit when you see to sign that letter. Okay, item number 10, discussion for board direction to address public health and safety concerns on county-owned land located in North Juniper Ridge. This is item number 10.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator, and joining me will do additional introductions.
I'm Janice Garceau, Director of Health Services.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director.
Also online, we have our Property Manager, Christy Bollinger. She's under the weather today, but she's available for questions.
Thank you for joining us.
Just to kick it off, this item recommends 3 board actions. The first is to direct staff to implement the draft remediation plan. Second requested item is to provide the county administrator discretion to amend the plan as necessary. Any major changes would come back to the board, but it's going to be a dynamic plan and things may change. And the third item requested this morning is to authorize an initial $200,000 for remediation and associated actions. Before we go into the specifics, staff want to acknowledge that this is a very sensitive item. We understand that we're talking about people's lives and where they live and where they, their home. So we appreciate the difficulty of this discussion. What we're talking about is a 50-acre site in North Juniper Ridge. There was a code enforcement complaint that led to this plan. Peter's going to start off and talk about the code enforcement item. I will then summarize the remediation plan, and Janice will talk about the health services aspect of the plan and what the department can do and also what they can't do. Sometimes there's a misperception of what the department can do. So we want to clearly delineate that. But with that, I'll kick it over to Peter.
So one more note from my point of view. So item 10 is the discussion of the land in North Juniper Ridge. And item number 11 is discussing about safe parking program in the unincorporated county. So let's remember that right after this discussion, the business discussion about responding to a code enforcement case is a discussion about what else can we do. So they're a little bit separate today. One's going to follow the other. I just wanted everybody to understand that.
Great. Thanks for that introduction. And I just want to echo the collaboration amongst departments, as Eric noted, with Janice's team as well as with Christy Bollinger and Eric's role as well. This spring, the Community Development Department received a code compliance complaint regarding Juniper Ridge. And Angie Habernier, our administrative manager, in coordination with Randy Scheid, our building official, Todd Cleveland, our on-site wastewater manager, and the sheriff's office went and visited the Juniper Ridge property, the 50 acres, and did confirm that there's a homeless encampment there that's unsanctioned, and recorded in numerous photographs the presence of human waste, solid waste, and illegal structures that have wood burning apparatus. Those factors in the community development department's responsibilities represent a series of code violations, and in our responsibilities, in our purview, an eminent public health and safety issue. And so over the last several months, there's been genuine coordination with the departments to discuss this matter and come before the board to seek direction. So that's the recap that I think provides the requisite context in terms of why this property is in violation of land use, building, and on-site wastewater regulations. And building and on-site wastewater regulations are administered by Deschutes County, but they're state regulations that address the structural code as well as the appropriate treatment and disposal of humans.
Oh, and then one more item there. I mean, this is the code enforcement, code compliance effort. And this happens all over the county on private property, a failing septic system, a big solid waste problem, non-permitted structures, for the safety of the inhabitants and the safety of neighboring properties. So this fits under that same scenario. It just happens to be the public's property that Deschutes County has. And these are just way out of compliance for safety and environmental reasons.
I actually took a tour there with Officer Zook in the fall of 2020, and I witnessed lots of buildings with wood, and almost all of them had chimneys coming out of them. And I remember that day, it was in September, and it was a hot day. Somebody had a fire going, and he fortunately carried water with him, I think 10 gallons, and went up to the individual and said, please, we've got to put this fire out now. So anyway, it's been there. The camp's been there for a while, and apparently someone finally decided to, file the code enforcement on us, the county. So, which reminds me, I know it not in the 200,000 that I think has been allocated to date, but remember last week we had 2 fires, one in Lapine. Where was the other one? Anyway, 2 fires and Redmond. Okay. So I immediately remembered last year, the Forest Service gave all the campers fire extinguishers in Sisters and down at China Hat. Every camp had a fire extinguisher. And, whatever we do, I believe each one of those camps should get a fire extinguisher as soon as the county can get it to them, just in case that we have more fires. And we are getting to that season. And I just thought, gosh, I think that's a really wise use of our funding, just helping people keep safer. I know we're going to ban it, but will people all follow the rule? It's part of the ban is no fires, but still fire extinguishers can be incredibly helpful in this situation tomorrow and not in 3 weeks. So.
Great, thank you.
Next, I'll cover the draft remediation plan. In your packet is the draft remediation plan. I'm going to refer to page 5 that talks about the proposed timeline. It's a 10-week time period. That's a general guideline. In phase 1 of the plan, there would be establishment of a project team and develop the communication plan, which is extremely important. That would be followed by outreach to the individuals that are living on the property to inform them of the upcoming actions. Also, to address the immediate health risk, we would deploy a contractor to clean up the human waste and also deploy portable toilets, hand washing stations, and potable water so that the problem's not getting worse. We'd also deploy dumpsters and start the installation of concrete jersey barriers. We would also deploy an assessment team to connect with individuals and try to get them into services and shelter as available. Janice will talk more about that. There's a couple of issues. Sometimes there's not shelter beds available, or if they are, sometimes the individual chooses not to. So those are some complicating factors. The idea is for people to voluntarily leave the property. In phase 2, we would start cleanup of abandoned and burned out encampments, and also removal of abandoned vehicles. We would continue to do outreach to the individuals living on the property. Phase 3 is continued preparations for individuals who do not voluntarily leave, and the initial removal of personal property. That would include storage for 45 days from the date of removal. That's in state law. And phase 4 would be removal of individuals remaining on the property and final removal of the personal property. Christy, do you want to add anything? Just a quick high-level summary of the remediation plan, but I want to give Christy an opportunity in case I missed anything.
Yeah, I think I would just like to emphasize that this is just in draft form. As we put a project team together and go through the items, I'm sure some of maybe the order or specifics will change. So I just really wanted to emphasize that, and until we get into it and start working it, it's kind of difficult to know exactly on timing. Like Eric said earlier, this is, it's a concept. We haven't proved it out. So yeah, really wanted to just bring that to point.
Great, thank you.
Also, we want to point out that the team that's been working on the DSL land swap and the service providers up in Redmond is mostly the same team that would work on this. So if we move forward on the Juniper Ridge remediation plan, the DSL work will need to be paused or delayed. These type of things take a tremendous amount of resources and staff time. Any questions on the remediation plan before I turn it over to Janice?
So another big picture item, this is the, third week of June, July, August, September. I mean, this is the summertime. There'll be hot days here coming up, but I mean, this is the time in a season for action, is to say, stepping into the winters when things slow way down. So, just big picture, what can we get done? How can we make this whole situation better? And I'm referring to all moving parts on this between now and when the snow flies. So just another big picture view of this. 10 weeks is what, 2.5 months.
Morning.
Morning.
Commissioners. I'm going to start by just restating the mission of health services, which is to protect the safety and health and promote the safety and health of the community of Deschutes County. I was really dismayed just a moment ago to hear this plan referred to as the health services plan. And it's important to me to make clear that we are at the table as a partner, primarily in the interest of protecting the health and safety of the entire community, including those who live at Juniper Ridge and call Juniper Ridge home, some of whom have called Juniper Ridge home for a decade. We did collaborate with.
This is referred to as the health and safety plan, probably not
Yes.
health services plan.
Yes,
So I'm just trying to process what you said there. Who said that?
I think it was.
Rewind the
someone giving-
tape. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I think it was someone giving testimony, and I
Okay,
think it's
got it, okay.
my concern that often health services is associated with removing people from their homes. And
No,
that
that's a
is-
good point then. Thank you.
That is not our job or our intent. Our intent in collaborating with our county partners is to do what we can to minimize the impact on the people living there.
Yeah.
Both by providing them with needed health supplies now, which they've probably needed for a long time, and trying to do what we can to minimize the impact of leaving your home and going to unknown places. So the role of the host team, which is one of my teams, will be to work with those people they're serving now to support them as they're doing today. I mean, they go out to Juniper several times a week, provide behavioral health supports, basic needs supports, referrals. They will continue to do that. As this transition plan transpires, they will be supporting those individuals directly, working with them to try to make a plan for where they might go next. Some of those individuals may choose to go to shelter or other opportunities that are available to them. Some of them may not, because they have family members living with them, because they have a vehicle that they call home, because they have pets that can't go there, or for some other reason they can't access those options. They will certainly be willing to participate with other service providers in doing assessments of individuals if they have capacity, but there are a number of encampment closures occurring right now that are affecting well over 200 people in our community. So their bandwidth as a team of 9 covering the whole county is what it is. I just want to make that really clear. And then last, they have asked that the county teams that are responsible for the decision to close Juniper Ridge be tasked with communicating that decision to the residents. I think my team wants to be in support of residents, not communicating the timelines. So that is one request from them. And that's primarily because it impacts relationships of trust and their ability to actually do the in-reach that no one else can do like they do. So,
Well, and relationships and trust is the key to the whole thing, because we can't have the good cop, bad cop here. I mean, this is serious business. This is people's lives. We have unsanctioned camping on public lands, health and safety. I mean, there's reasons we have to proceed, and let's not set ourselves up for, well, they said they have to do it. So, I'll take the front of that. I'll go out and share the information with people. It's not going to be pretty no matter what we do. I mean, this is the moment. Let's work together and keep it as positive as we can.
thank you.
Last item for discussion is which fund to pay for this. The staff report outlines two main options. The first is Fund 090, which is the Project Development and Debt Service Fund. There are funds available to pay for the remediation plan out of Fund 090. Typically, these funds are used for purchasing real property acquisition, and there's also discussion of using the funds from 090 to help pay for the courthouse expansion. And then the other main option is the general fund. The general fund reserves are at a low level, so that's just something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
That concludes the staff report. Happy to take any questions.
So authorization for $200,000 is kind of the starting point, but we think it may even be more.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell until we get in there. If the board provides direction to move forward, property management will come back with a contract with a service or with a provider to do the contract cleanup, like an environmental service contractor.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
What about doing something like tomorrow for just cleaning it up from tomorrow forward for septics and, for portable toilets and things like that? Why are we waiting to do that? I just, I think that's really important that we follow our own laws.
Those are included in phase 1 of the plan. We would have to get contractors in place, so that'll take a short amount of time, and then also we'd want to communicate to the residents. But that is included in phase 1 of the plan.
I just think it's really, the sooner we do that, so that they know we really would appreciate you living this way, and we're going to facilitate it at this point in time. And I do believe that the fire extinguishers are so important. Remember the fire of August of 2021, when it was the end of August, and that fire that started from Juniper burned right up to the walls of the Four Seasons Mobile Home Park, with a lot of vulnerable people living there. So I just don't want that to happen again. The winds, remember, and then we had the September 7th of that same year, the winds were 70 miles an hour. So we've got to do as much as we can. And I believe that getting fire extinguishers to everyone sooner rather than later apparently the Forest Service is going to check on all their camps. And they said, some of their camps will have the extinguishers from last year and they still should be good. So I feel like, those 2 fires last week were a wake-up call to, hey, it is fire season now. It's probably stopped raining, but it hasn't stopped snowing. Isn't it? Didn't it snow yesterday?
There you go.
So anyway,
And then one other thought in this whole project, is there any thought of, fuel reduction? And I'm thinking just the lower limbs on the existing trees. So not fuel, not a big project, but just taking those first limbs off as you're working our way in there may really help. Because then the open understory really makes a big difference. Any thoughts, Christy?
Yeah, we didn't include that in the remediation plan, but we have had preliminary conversation with Kevin Moriarty about that area and recognize it is needed. We could work on pricing. I think we're close to the point of where we wouldn't be able to do it until fall. So I think there's that sort of moratorium.
Industrial fire protection. Yep.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, definitely needs to be done. We just don't know exactly what the timing would be.
Well, as I say, the vision would be not even having to remove trees, but just the lower limbs all the way through there, up to 6-8 feet or whatever it is. And it just opens up the understory.
Exactly.
you really can't do that this time of year.
Well, I'm just pointing out that
I mean, I think that would.
that's a to-do, could be on
Yeah.
the list.
But that's really so helpful. And that's part of our, our fire prevention code to our residents is to limb up trees.
It's also very difficult with bushy juniper trees to get in underneath and cut the bottom branches. It's, by the time someone crawled in there to the base of the tree, they might as well just cut the thing down.
Well, we did it at my house and I know it works really well and you just can't do it once. You've got to keep it up. So, yeah.
Thoughts?
I can appreciate the need for consistency in the enforcement of our codes. There are clearly code violations happening here, and if we did not enforce our codes against ourselves as property owners, then it would be very difficult for us to do that for other property owners. I also appreciate that as a cleanup and moving people out plan, this is pretty thoughtful. This 10-week time frame and the steps involved, but as one of our public commenters this morning mentioned, 10 weeks is not very long, and what we really need to address this problem and ensure that people aren't just going to be cleared out of here and then go to another unauthorized location and cause more code violations, is places for people to go and pathways out of homelessness, things that we could have been investing in for many years now. We've known, certainly homelessness as an issue in Deschutes County has been on the radar for at least a decade. Because, just from a cost perspective, we are going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to clean up this area. And if we are just moving people, if we're just shuffling people to another unauthorized, unmanaged, uninfrastructured location, where they will cause more code violations, we will be doing the same cleanup later. And it's not a strategic or efficient use of taxpayer dollars to do that. And we really need to be working on creating adequate places for people to go with accountability and wraparound services that help them move out of homelessness if we want to actually do anything about this problem. So I'm torn on this. I certainly understand the need to enforce our codes, but I also feel like we're basically just pushing people out of one unauthorized location and likely sending them to another because there are insufficient facilities, even though the city of Bend has brought on hundreds of shelter beds in the last year and a half. There are insufficient facilities for people to go to. And at some point we are running the risk of we are running the risk of legal challenge under Martin versus Boise and other legal precedents that we've seen.
I had a really interesting thought, and I appreciate what Christy you've done, and I feel that it's incredibly important that we go in and we clean it up per our code. But what if I know we've written several letters to the governor. What if we actually made this like a sanctioned spot, these 50 acres, and we cleaned it up, but this is sanctioned. We have security there. We have rules there. What if we took that tactic instead of saying, okay, guys, we would love for you to go to safe parking. We'd love for you to go to Bethlehem Inn. There's some really great help out there. But what if we turned this into a totally, because we were talking about spending money on security to begin with, what if we made it a sanctioned, secure spot? I mean, it's on EFU land, right?
That's kind of our next agenda item.
Yeah, I know. No, but I'm just saying that. The items could have been in different order. Maybe they could have flipped the safe park, that first. But that's what I was thinking, that perhaps, okay, we've got to clean it up. I mean, guys, that was almost 2.5 years ago. I was there and I was wondering at the time, why are these people allowed to have wood structures with fireplaces? And if you or I did that, the county would be very unhappy. So I definitely believe it needs to be cleaned up. But what if we made it our spot? I know it's right off of 97. So that's tricky in and out. That's, what are people driving there 75 miles an hour or something? But it's just a thought, what kind of land, and has the governor responded to any of our letters lately? Do we know, Nick?
I'm not aware that we have received a direct response. I think the responses we have received have either been through one of our legislative delegation members, Representative Levy. Thanks to her for her diligent work coordinating with the governor's office, or through the staff at the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Those are the ways that we've received responses to this point.
Okay, because I'm hoping to see the housing director on Friday when I go back to Salem. So.
Well, so the big picture again, we're basically setting the culture of Central Oregon. What are we going to do? How are we going to respond to this? Let's offer people services. Let's figure out where people can be, and that'll be the next agenda item. So I'm excited to have that discussion. But this is also responding to the fact that we do have a code enforcement case. It's not safe for people. We have history of fire there already. So I do support proceeding. To give you clarity, Fund 090 is probably the place to start, because that could be subsidized by the general fund in the end anyways, in the next fiscal year, because that could be part of a proposed budget in the future. So that would be a starting point for spending money, 090.
The next item on our agenda, I'm not sure if that addresses the kind of proposal that Commissioner Adair is putting forward. Safe parking.
It doesn't.
Yeah, safe parking is typically, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spots in an established parking lot next to a building where they can offer people the use of bathrooms and offer them running water and things like that. Safe parking does not refer to the kind of outdoor shelter creation that I think was just being proposed out in North Juniper Ridge. So our next agenda item does not address this situation on site. It may, through the creation of additional safe parking, some additional safe parking locations around the county, create some small opportunities, hopefully a number of small opportunities for creating places for supported places for people to go where they can take steps out of homelessness. But it's not going to enable us to do what Commissioner Dare was just proposing.
Well, so my thought is that we close this agenda item and get to the next one and have this discussion. So I'm just letting you know that the action for today is directing staff for this plan and figuring out the funding of it. So is there support at this time to
Can I
proceed?
just ask Christy a question? Christy, what is the zoning of that property, the 50 acres? Is it a mixed?
I can double check that, Commissioner Dare. It's either EFU and open space conservation or one or the other, but I can check that really quick here.
Thanks. Thank you.
Peter, do you know off the top of your head?
I do, second here, the subject property is.
I think you could
Yeah.
inclusive farm use at that point.
Yeah, the Deschutes County property could, Christie was right in her initial thoughts. It has, I show it as, open space and conservation and landscape management combining zone for the Deschutes County property, which is tax lot 800. The city of Bend, which is not this discussion, that property is zoned exclusive farm use.
So is the
So that property that like 500 acres, I believe it is that the one we're talking about that's here for the city? It's like almost 500 acres, I believe.
I don't have the acreage there, but it's significant in size. I mean, we can pull, I can let you know and just.
and that's what Chris is doing right now too.
If I
So
can I just chime in real quick?
Please.
Because the property is outside the UGB, it is still county legal's position that the accommodations that were being suggested would not be permissible.
They're not permissible.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I'm just,
that is why we are working with the governor's office, working with the legislature. A little bit
Special-
of flexibility.
That's correct.
a dispensation.
Yes. Under the existing law, the way that we interpret HB 2006, we are not allowed to do that.
Oh,
As I say, so if we focus on one item, then we can get to the next one, which would be a little bit, I think of it as a more open discussion about where people could be. So discussion for this topic, is there support? And I support directing staff to implement this remediation plan, knowing that it'll evolve and it'll probably be a different number, probably more.
Is it possible to defer a decision on this item until after we've discussed the next item?
As I say, I made a position of support. We'll see.
Frankly, we have talked about what the county can do to create authorized, managed, supported places where people can go to take steps out of homelessness for years. And as long as it's the next item after a decision to, clear people out of an area, I don't have a lot of confidence that we will work seriously on those proposals. So changing the order of these items, I think, would be helpful to actually making some real progress on the next item.
As I say, I'm supportive of giving clear direction at this time on this agenda item to proceed to the next. Any thoughts, Commissioner?
okay. Well, I do take exception to that we haven't done anything. We do have 12 acres that we've been working on since, I believe, 2 years off of Highway 126 and hopefully Oasis Village. And that program is going to be going forward. We did give, 900,000 to help with the Bethlehem Inn completion. So we have done, those are just off the top. We've done some significant things to contribute. We contributed 1.5 million to the city of Bend to help with some of their programs, which I believe we just recently had implemented 750,000 of that funding that we had allocated. But I'm okay to go ahead. Because I like it because the administrator's discretion, and as Nick heard me today, if there's any chance the governor comes in and says, hey, let's really clean this place up. I mean, that's what I think we need to do first as responsible public servants, clean it up. And then if we can actually add security to that, if the governor allows it. So, yeah, I think this is a good way to at least start today. Is it one motion or do we need 3?
You can do one motion.
Okay, so I move to direct staff to implement the remediation plan for county-owned property located in North Juniper Ridge, provide the county administrator discretion to amend the plan as necessary, and I'm sure it will be amended, and authorize an additional $200,000 for remediation and associated actions, including fire extinguishers for each count. I just added that.
Well,
to my
so
own.
in that existing 200,000, or is that?
Well,
another
I don't think
allocation?
they're that expensive, so I would think we could put it in the existing 200,000.
Yeah, that's been made in the motion then. I will second it. So it's been moved and seconded to proceed with this remediation plan. Any other discussion?
I think it's incredibly important to get the health standards done as soon as we can possibly get those contracts signed, Christy. So getting the portable toilets, hand washing stations, and potable water in there. I think that's, and then the cleanup. So we've got to really make a statement.
And then one more thought, this is code enforcement, response to code enforcement. When this happens to a private citizen, somebody acknowledges, oh, yeah, this seems to be a violation, as I say, solid waste, structural permitting, whatever the issue is. And it just slowly escalates. So you don't start off strong, you start off very businesslike. Okay, well, let's respond to this situation. And then, but there's no going backwards. You can only go forwards. And I support that in this situation. Let's go forwards, let's do good things, and let's escalate as we go. And that's really what's been laid out here in phase 1, 2, 3 also. Any other thoughts?
I'd just like to reemphasize, we're going to be paying once for cleanup and moving people out of here. As long as we're not investing in the places for people to go and the pathways out of homelessness, we will be paying again for cleanup and moving people out of the next unauthorized location in short order. And that is, in my mind, a very inefficient use of taxpayer dollars when making the right investments on the front end could prevent repeated cycles of cleanup and clearing.
Well, and Commissioner Chang, when you first got elected, you raised your hand enthusiastically to be on the Emergency Homeless Task Force to put a plan together. It took a whole year. A year later, you came back with a draft plan. It was like a marshmallow, and it hasn't even been proceeded with yet.
Well,
so we're talking years that this has happened.
That group completed a plan, is a very
It was a draft
comprehensive,
plan.
thorough plan, and handed it off to the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. It has not been adopted yet. I would expect a lot of the pieces of that plan to show up in the Coordinated Homeless Response Office's plan. And the reason that it took so long for it to get to completion is not it's not my fault, and it is not the Emergency Homeless Task Force's fault.
Whose fault is it?
I would say it is a failure of the Coordinated Homeless Response Office.
So yeah, the buck needs to stop somewhere, and I don't mind taking the responsibility. And we do have leadership happening here right now. It isn't talking about somebody else doing something some other day. It's talking about doing something and doing something today.
Yeah, and I'm saying that what you are voting to do right now with this item is basically just incurring more costs for the people of Deschutes County and not solving any problems and moving the problem to a new location.
Well, as I say, there's a different way to look at this. I mean, that's a negative way to look at it. The positive way is there's a vibrant economy, there's jobs available. Housing is way expensive right now. So I do, hurt for people that can't get into housing, but we have a vibrant economy, jobs available. And what's the culture of Central Oregon? Are we going to let people just kind of set up and get real dangerous out there? I mean, talk about China Hat and these fires we just had. It gets real dangerous. We need to respond to that. So even if people are mobile and moving around, we cannot allow these bad situations to evolve just by watching it get worse and worse over time.
That's right. We need to do something, and shuffling people from one unauthorized location to another is not doing something. It is merely moving the problem around.
I do believe the executive order from the governor did allocate approximately $12 million for projects, which by that requirement have to be done by January 9th of 2024. So we're adding another $12 million worth of funding in Central Oregon. Well, I believe it's 12 million, which will actually get
Right
out.
now. So yeah, I mean, let's celebrate the actions that are happening. Let's not think about
And a
the
significant-
dark future. It can be bright.
A significant chunk of that funding is to prevent more people from falling into homelessness. Some of it is meant to deal with people who are already in homelessness, but hopefully you think of those prevention dollars, that kind of, if that can turn the spigot down a little bit in terms of people moving into homelessness, then it gives us a window of opportunity to actually do something about moving some of the people who are currently homeless out of homelessness.
I think this is a great time to bring up the ask by the Veterans Village. They ask us for 150,000. They asked the city of Bend for 150,000 to build 7 more cabins at their location. And I really hope that we'll remember this conversation next week. And I do worry about the kids that are homeless at this point in time. And through the legislature and the executive order, I believe that J-Bar-J is getting 2.6 million to build to purchase a 15-bed facility in Redmond. So that's for 15 beds for teenagers in Redmond. Things are happening.
Things are happening. There are amazing service provider organizations in our community who are moving people out of homelessness every day. And we have still seen the problem get worse in the last few years. I think that is an indication that we have not given them the capacity to do their work at a scale that will really turn the dial on this problem yet.
You'll have to bring up the number again, 17
about-
billion
let's
that's been
get to the
spent
next
by
one.
California, 17 billion in 4 years. And is their problem getting worse? I do believe it is. So
Okay, so
It's not always
it's been
money.
motioned and seconded.
yes.
How do we get this?
Not
to
always
the
money.
next
It's
agenda?
about having the right people doing the work and doing it smartly, which is something that we have here in Central Oregon. No thanks in many ways to the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners. I mean, we
I can't believe
occasionally
you're so
will.
negative about this.
Yeah.
All these investments and relationships we have,
Mhm.
there's a dark world that you're portraying here.
Well,
Um,
the dark world is that homelessness continues to increase in our region. We have a window of opportunity. We have a window of opportunity to
Legalization of
actually
drugs.
turn a corner on this before it gets to Portland scale or San Francisco scale or whatever city you want to point to. But if we do not act swiftly and smartly, that is where we're headed. And
So-
shuffling people around from one unauthorized location to another
Jen-
is not acting smartly.
So calling
Janice,
for the
Janice
vote.
Garceau would love to say something before we have our vote, if I may.
Thank you.
Commissioners, you have really hard jobs. I have met with each of you individually. I think you care about our community very deeply. I think you probably also care about the people who will be impacted by this decision, as well as the people who live in close proximity. What I want to offer is that there are communities that have engaged in strategic planning that has reduced homelessness effectively. I shared an article with you recently from Houston. I know that's a large urban community. It's different from ours, but it's a place to start, where they made a planful, strategic, collaborative effort to end homelessness, and they have effectively reduced homelessness by 60% in their community. And I really want to partner with you in bringing those resources to you and offering hope. I agree that we have to see opportunity. And I worry, at the risk of my position with the county, Nick can tell me if I still have a job in an hour. We're doing a lot of fighting about this issue. And we all want the same thing, which is safety and compassion for everyone in our community. And I think we can get there together. And I really want to be at the table with you to explore solutions together. One request I have is that in this discussion, we remember to talk about the people impacted first and most as respectfully as we can. They are human beings with stories. Many of them fell into homelessness because of circumstances that would have ended many of us much sooner. They are demonstrating enormous resilience in the face of incredible hardship. They are not all innocent, good actors, Commissioner DeBonne, not at all. Some of them are preying on each other. We know that, and we are concerned about that. But the vast majority want solutions as much as we do. So I just really hope we can come together on this issue and just look at the places where there have been solutions. It will not be a quick fix. 12 million from the governor ain't going to fix it. It is not going to get fixed by January. It's going to take some time and commitment. Thanks.
Chair DeBonne,
Sure.
I may just.
We're in the middle of a motion, but we're getting
You're in
there.
the middle of the motion right now. I'd rather than saying it after the motion.
Yep,
and
it's
after
fine.
the vote, just a couple of quick items. First, if this carries, staff will provide regular updates to the board. We will keep you in the loop every step of the way, number one. Number two, we will be prepared to bring contracts back to address the immediate public health and safety issues first. That is going to be our primary goal. And the third point to make, and Peter summarized the code enforcement for our collective benefit. One of the keys with code enforcement and code compliance in Deschutes County is to achieve compliance. And one of our mantras is we have flexibility in time, but perhaps not in code. And it often happens as the Community Development Department works with property owners to achieve compliance, additional time may be necessary. So with this, the plan lays out steps to address the immediate public health hazard first. And then if we need more time, and it's not stating an indefinite amount of time, the Community Development Department, who's charged with achieving code compliance, will give us benchmarks, and we'll work collectively as the property owner, the Board of County Commissioners representing the property owner, along with Christy Bollinger and myself. So with the administrative discretion that the plan affords me, once it's finalized, we will continue to work with the board and the Community Development Department to achieve compliance in a time to the extent possible that it works for everybody. But again, we have to be making progress with addressing the immediate public health hazard, and then continuing to work with the people that are living in the area now. And it is a collaborative effort, and our departments have shared their opinions, sometimes in a spirited manner, because we all care about the outcome that works for the collective benefit of our community, for our codes, for the consistency with our property owners, with everybody. And just a final point, Commissioner Adair asked me about the governor's office. I likely failed to mention, I know Commissioner DeBonne has been in direct contact with the governor's office through the governor's staff, so I don't want to discount that. And I think Commissioner Chang has also been involved in discussions with Representative Levy and others. So I just didn't want to fail to mention that there have been contacts. I may not have been, and I was not a part of those, but a part of others. So I don't want to state that the governor's office has not been responsive. They certainly have been responsive. I didn't want to discount that. Thank you. That's
I'll acknowledge, I mean, I mentioned to the governor personally, we were able to meet a couple of weeks ago, and I showed her the code enforcement case. I explained the situation. And then I was able to talk to the housing and homeless coordinator, policy person in the office, and they just received the information. They didn't understand that it was like this. They're not, and it's the middle of a legislative session, but it didn't quite get traction. But they've received the information personally. Okay, calling for the vote. No, just no guidance. Calling for the vote, Commissioner Adair. Commissioner Chang.
I'm going to abstain.
And chair votes yes. So thank you very much. Good discussion. As I say, we've got to follow on here. And there's another discussion going to follow this. So the answer is yes, let's proceed with a public health and safety plan responding to a code enforcement case.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Item number 11, discussion and possible board direction on a safe parking program in unincorporated Deschutes County. In fact, another note too, on the last item, This could be the call for if somebody wants to donate a fire extinguisher, maybe we have people bring them into the office here. We can distribute them out because it's serious business. But I mean, I'm thinking the numbers there, you know, yeah, I had a fire extinguisher, an extra fire extinguisher from when my wife closed her office. And I was thinking about that just now, just being able to hand that to somebody out in the woods too, as it gets dry and hot. Okay, so item number 11. Safe parking program.
Good morning again. For the record, Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. I asked Peter to continue joining me because we're talking about land use. But Peter Gutowski, our Community Development Director. This item is to talk about a safe parking program in the unincorporated county. As the board is keenly aware, Oregon land use encourages development in the cities and not the county, and wants to keep the county for the most part rural. So the land use laws are vastly different in the unincorporated county versus a city. With passage of House Bill 2006, which occurred in 2021, that bill allowed cities to adopt safe parking programs within city limits. That bill also allows counties to adopt safe parking programs in the urban growth boundary. There's been lots of discussion about whether or not the county can adopt a safe parking program outside of the urban growth boundary. And as we heard earlier, we had a legislative council give us an opinion that was a bit inconclusive. So at this point, there's differing opinions on whether or not the county can adopt a safe parking program outside of the urban growth boundary. In terms of a safe parking program, it's important to note that there's requirements along with those. The city of Redmond and Bend have safe parking programs. There's different requirements, but in general, they require some basic services such as porta potties, hand washing stations, drinkable water, dumpsters or trash facilities. And also in Redmond and in one of the Bend programs, there's a requirement of case management. So a social service provider needs to be engaged and the property owner needs to agree to it. So the question for the board this morning is if they want staff to bring back a safe parking program for consideration. The staff report outlines three main options. One is the status quo, not to adopt a safe parking program. Option 2 is to draft a safe parking program within the urban growth boundaries. That would be outside of the urban growth boundaries of Bend and Redmond. And option 3 is to adopt a program that goes beyond the urban growth boundaries. Peter, do you want to add anything?
Well, thank you. As you consider these options, to the extent that you want to interpret House Bill 2001 to allow for the ability to establish safe parking outside urban growth boundaries, I think it's just a recognition that this wouldn't be, to the extent that that was the direction and staff brought back ordinance for consideration, it wouldn't be a land use ordinance because this is a carve out of under this potential interpretation. So staff's coordinated internally. Legal counsel may have some perspectives that are worth sharing, but I just want to underscore that it wouldn't be a land use proceeding, and there would be, I presume, requisite standards to meet, as Eric noted, that are occurring with the cities of Bend and Redmond. If one met those, then presumably that safe parking could occur, but it wouldn't be under any type of land use permit or entitlement.
Thank you for that important point, Peter. In fact, the city of Redmond and Bend's programs, those applications are handled administratively and approved administratively. If the board wanted us to move forward with the safe parking programs in the UGBs, we would coordinate with both cities on how to implement that. We've reached out to city staff and had some preliminary discussions. The discussion with Redmond was we would likely use their joint management agreement and the applications would go through the city of Redmond. With Bend, the request was that the county would process those applications. So we would likely adopt a program for the urban growth boundary in Bend. We would adopt Bend's program so that we have consistency. So there'd be a little bit difference between those two urban growth boundaries.
So a safe parking program in the unincorporated county, looking at the kind of the option 3 under Deschutes County's options. We do have rural churches and some rural properties that may be a good fit for this. And I'd like to have that discussion, I guess. I haven't had a lot of specific churches, say, oh, I'm ready to do this, but some people have heard about it. So, as a point of direction today, I would like to, float that idea and see how many people respond, I guess would be the concept. So Peter, you're saying it's not going to be a planning commission, land use, anything. This is just authorized or not authorized from the board's point of view. And we might do it under an emergency declaration also.
Correct. I think that's the interpretation. One interpretation of House Bill 2006 is that it provides a carve out both within our.
Yep. Okay. Because of that
outside
legislation.
There's certain performance measures that need to be in place. It doesn't mean that one couldn't challenge if this was the direction that the board wanted to proceed, just to put it on record that one could challenge that interpretation and say it is a land use matter and that the board has decided to interpret land use, in which case one could presumably challenge the authorization of a safe parking program directly to the Land Use Board of Appeals and say, with the argument that the board exercise discretion on HB 2000.
And I'm just looking for, let's have a community conversation to see if there's the engagement in this concept. As I say, I could envision going as far as authorizing a program in the unincorporated community and even an emergency declaration just to practice doing it. So and you're talking about what could go wrong. I'm just thinking, should we try
Let's
it?
talk what can go right.
Yep, there you go. Yep. I know. Yeah. I'm just,
ability in these types of approaches.
Yeah.
Well, I know that the Bend's parking program is one of their most successful, and Redmond is doing an excellent job too with their safe parking. The Gales property, that is not within the UGB, is it? Okay, so we're still waiting for that special state dispensation then from the governor in order to incorporate what they would like to do.
To talk about proceeding under emergency orders too.
Right.
That's what we possibly get to.
I don't know if Kim's going to let me.
Can you walk us through in a little bit more detail, kind of how that challenge process works? Like, what are the, what happens? What are the steps there? If we pass a safe parking ordinance that someone thinks overreaches, if we approve a land use application on an EFU zone property that's close into the city, and people start to move ahead with one of those facilities. How does that become a challenge?
I'm happy to respond. Kim can certainly provide additional clarity. To the extent that the board held a hearing and considered an ordinance that created a safe parking program subject to the performance standards that are listed in House Bill 2006, right?
Yes.
Objectors could disagree with that interpretation and basically argue that the Board of County Commissioners has decided to interpret state land use law and have exercised discretion on law that is not applicable to the safe parking program that's being applied outside urban growth boundaries. And because it's not a land use decision, you don't go through a local appeal process. You would go straight to the land use. One could go straight to the Land Use Board of Appeals, hire an attorney, and produce arguments that the board has exercised discretion with land use, and argue that House Bill 2006 does not apply to areas outside the urban growth boundary. And LUBA, and presumably if it was challenged, that decision would have to go to the Court of Appeals, it could go to the Oregon Supreme Court. But I believe that's how the appeal process or objections would be processed.
Well, and we did our due diligence working with Representative Levy's office, asking for legislative counsel to give us guidance on this, and it came back inconclusive, right?
Correct.
Say we don't pass a land use regulation. Say somebody says, I'd like to do, I'm close into the UGB. I'm on EFU zoned land. I am allowed, it's an authorized conditional use to build a campground. If they come in with a campground application, and we approve it as a campground, and then they start using it as outdoor shelter, how would a challenge kind of form? How could a challenge form against that kind of a land use?
Good question, Commissioner Chang. The Deschutes County does have in our codes the ability to establish a campground subject to certain standards. Campgrounds under state law have to be oriented around tourism, so there's a limit to how long one can stay at a campground. Campgrounds in our code also have to have a recreational amenity. So in addition to providing, robust services, water, there's got to be ability to have drinking water. There's obviously wastewater facilities, improved access. It can become quite expensive. So to take your question even further, a campground's established and then they want to offer something more, and there was a complaint, because the community development department is when someone wants to challenge land use practices, it's a complaint driven process. CDD does not go out looking for complaints or violations. One would, if that happened and one was complaining about the performance of a campground, we would revisit it based on the decision. And if it was found that the activities that were occurring at the campground were not in alignment with what was approved, then one would find themselves in code compliance, because there's specific areas for where one can camp. You could have a portion of campground can be for RVs, so there's a footprint. And if the footprint is violated and or the stays are being violated, again, based on the fact that campgrounds they're limited occupancy.
30 out of 60 consecutive days.
Yes, and it has to be registered with the state. It has to have kind of a tourist element to it. So that's how one could find themselves in violation of their entitlement.
So we're talking about the safe parking program, kind of defining it and having a public hearings on the matter to put it in place. As I say, I would like to propose that we open it up as far as unincorporated county inside and outside of UGB, and emergency declaration if necessary. I mean, so this is the situation we're in. We have actions happening this summer, and if we can offer some more places that, and it's a partnership. It's the host of the property is going to be engaged. It'll be a supported environment. Any other thoughts?
I am meeting tomorrow morning with Rick Russell, who is the angel behind the program in Redmond.
Like parking program.
Yes, Rick Russell has done such amazing work there. We actually have a couple of vehicles on our property in Redmond. And I feel like he is making a difference. So they have 90 days of wraparound services. And I'm not quite sure why he needs to meet with me in the morning, but I'm going to see him at 7:30. So it's always good to know. I'm hoping that he is in a position to expand. He actually just visited Austin, Texas for 3 days. And he and his team went with me to Helping Hands program in Portland. So Rick is incredibly serious about what he does, and, safe parking, if we can add some more, and hopefully add the Gales property somehow to this program.
And I met him at the church at the park program in Salem. So I did some reviewing of existing programs with him also.
Yeah,
So
it's great to
I have
know
one
that he
other.
lives here.
Oh, please.
Go ahead.
One other idea. So you've heard me talk about long-term visitor area. Here's a general outline of another idea that Bureau of Land Management does this down in California and Arizona. You can hand that to Kim too, and Nick, you can hand a few of these out. Just an outline of another opportunity, and it may need to be done under emergency orders, and we'll even see if it works. But my thought of the day is to get some people to look at this concept, and I'm talking about everybody on all sides of this issue, get a group together to talk about what if. And, it would be an area for people to be with a low cost permit, generally long term. So maybe 3 months at a time permit. Don't break the law, follow some rules, and you can just be there. Just a long-term visitor area. As I say, we really kind of need to have a work group around it to see how this would all fit in. As I say, Peter was talking about the specifics of the land use and the authorization of 2006. I haven't done any of that here, but it really could be a place for people, and inside or outside of UGB or a special state partnership to define some land. So my proposal to the commissioners is that we just authorize kind of a work group on this. I mean, that's a starting point, getting some people together to talk about it. And that's why I wanted to share this. I didn't want to talk about it too much last time because we were trying to get to one decision, but it's an outline.
Yeah, I would like to have more than a couple minutes to look at this, but.
Well, yeah, so the concept is.
These are certainly some of the things that continue to come up in discussions that.
Yeah. As I say, the concept is to study it. I mean, I don't have the answer. I have an idea and a question.
Or like us to schedule a work session for further discussion of this concept.
So that's probably the best thing we could do today with your.
Exactly. Schedule a work session, please.
Well, there we go. At least it's another tool. So that's.
So maybe
generally under
maybe
that
for people
concept.
who are watching and who didn't just receive this piece of paper a minute ago, you could give a little overview.
So long-term visitor area, as I say, this is used by the Bureau of Land Management at the federal level. So some large areas in California and Arizona, is my understanding, maybe New Mexico. Purpose is to designate a place for people to be able to camp on public land while promoting, environmental stewardship, mutual respect, responsibility. This could be an area. So as I say, I'm not even going to define it more with X amount of people per acre. So however that would work, anybody could be there, maybe not under 18 years old. So maybe adults only, just because of managing the situation. No illegal activities. And then trash bins, portable water, hand washing stations, designated parking areas for visitors to be part of it. And then services could be provided. So we don't have to start off as saying homeless people, because sometimes you ask people, okay, well, you're out in the woods here and you're living in the land. Are you homeless? No, just taking care of myself. So I'm not even using the word homeless here, but services could be provided, medical. We have these, people go out and offer services all the time. Public safety presence, service provider presence, and a set of rules. So the concept is, I want to be there. Okay, sign this piece of paper and please join us. But it's still not a low barrier. It's rules expected, but man, it sure could be an opportunity to offer a place for people.
Low barrier shelter does have rules. Just saying. Um,
Thanks for correcting me.
you know, just you stated a specific thing and it needed to be clarified. So your suggestion is to do this on county lands?
Well, so I don't want to
You're
define it anymore.
Or you're suggesting that we try to get the BLM to do this in our area?
I don't want to define it anymore. It's just an idea. It's a high level concept. You're trying to implement right now. I'm hesitant to do that because as soon as I say something, then you're going to hold it against me in the future, possibly. We got to build a relationship here and talk about what's possible. So anything's good right now.
Well, it says the BOCC will formally designate county land designated for the LTVA. So I mean, that's the proposal.
Concept.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's support to bring it to a work session. And as I say, I want community members to be involved with this. Think about, oh, does this make sense? Would this be right in our community? Because just like our community development director pointed out, we've got some code that's got a pretty tight box from what a campground is and how to get there. We've got homeless issues. It was said, we're going to displace people. They're going to be somewhere else. We have land. It's zoned resource land and it's off limits, but maybe we could possibly do an emergency order because of the situation we're in. So as I say, I don't want to define it more right now because anything's possible. Or not.
Yep. Let's bring that back for a work session. To go back to safe parking, and a potential ordinance. One thing that would be helpful for me to understand is how much land there really is within UGBs, but outside city limits. And what is in that land right now? I mean, is there really an opportunity there, or are we talking about a tiny little rind in between city limits and the urban growth boundary in our various municipalities that is essentially not worth passing an ordinance to make available?
Commissioner Chang, I respond in two ways. We can certainly substantiate that acreage if you would like to. We can coordinate with our GIS analysts and get you definitive acreage numbers. I will tell you that the cities of LaPine and Sisters, the urban growth boundaries and city limits are coterminous. The Sisters may have an area that's outside their UGB. I think that pertains to their public facility land. So those two cities, there is not an area that's what we would call an urban unincorporated area. The cities of Redmond and Bend do have some areas, and Bend specifically, it's been recently acknowledged. There was a city club meeting or event last week at the Unitarian Church. The city of Bend hasn't brought in all of its land that it was associated to the 2016 urban growth boundary map. They've master planned and annexed some. I can't give you that specific amount, but there's areas around Cooley Road, around the landfill, which I think they call the elbow. Those areas particular are not yet annexed. So if I won't make an educated guess, but I would say it's not small. And similarly, Redmond amended their urban growth boundary in 2006. They have not annexed all of that land, specifically on the west side. So I believe it's actually going through a master planning process. Nick, your coordinations that you've had with Keith Witowski and Eric King may also offer some context too.
Yeah, I mean, just ballpark in 2006, Redmond expanded the urban growth boundary by 2,300 acres. A year or so ago, I asked the city how much of that land has been annexed into the city. They said about 60%. I'm not the mathematician up here to quickly do that, but and I'm not looking at anybody to do that, but over half of that. So 40% of that would still be available. And then Ben's urban growth boundary was a ballpark 2,300 acres. They brought in Stevens Road. They've probably annexed a couple of hundred acres. So, I mean, I don't know, 3,000 to 4,000 acres might be available, but of that, what might actually be suitable, I'm not sure that we know that, but that's just off the cuff, what the amount of land that might be available.
Do you have any, do we have any sense for what the ownership of that property is? I mean, is any of it publicly owned property, or are we,
Not
you know,
much.
is this all about?
DSL.
Yeah, not much. It's probably almost all privately owned.
I mean, right, the large lot industrial tract is inside the urban growth boundary. That's owned by DSL, but committed to industrial uses. Yeah, most of that land is privately owned. Certainly in Redmond, those are larger tracts owned by a handful of property owners. Redmond, it's been too long. I imagine Redmond's ownership is a much more nuanced, just based on the tax lots that were brought into the urban growth boundary. But certain, yeah, outside of DSL, which is Stevens Track, and it's privately owned.
And you know, one of the things that it seems like one of the prime sites for safe parking is, you know, large building, you know, kind of, if not a public building, you know, a church or something like that with a big parking lot. Do we have any sense of whether any of that exists in this area outside the city limits within the UGB?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think there were a lot of institutional uses that were identified in 2016. There could be one or a handful of religious institutions that were brought in, but if I had to make an educated guess, I would say the likelihood of that ownership patterns.
The only other option would be Parks and Rec, what they might own outside of city limits inside the urban growth boundary. I'm not sure off the top of my head. That's the only other option that.
And I think for
Might be
Park and Rec, they while there was a need for park and recreational property, most of that I think is created during the master planning process prior to annexation, where the developers are coordinating with the city of Bend and the park districts, and they're negotiating system development charges. And there are times where they may pay less in system development charge by setting aside land that's in a park master plan that will be improved for a park. So I think that land transaction is happening during annexation. But we could certainly, we can chase this down and give you definitive numbers. These are just off the cuff.
I mean, just knowing that there's some thousands of acres, it seems like it's not it would be worthwhile to do the ordinance, at least for that area, just to make those thousands of acres available, opportunity places. So. Yeah, I'm not sure if I am prepared to vote to go beyond the UGB right now. I think there's still quite a lot of safe parking opportunity within incorporated cities. This would add some thousands of acres. And we do want people to be we want people to be close to services and potential housing and jobs. So.
And today we're setting direction just as a starting point. Any thoughts, Commissioner Adair?
And who's going to be responsible for running these safe parking programs? If we do it, will the city of Bend and Redmond then pick it up, that responsibility?
We would draft it and we would model ours on both the Bend and Redmond's for consistency, as well as they've already done the heavy lifting to really create the program. And then
But who's going to be the Rick Russell? Who's going to be the Rick Russell?
Basically, there's a company behind that with insurance. Yeah.
I mean, we make land just outside the city limits in Redmond, in West Redmond available, and Rick Russell can go and seek potential landowners who are interested in working with him, with Mountain View Community Development.
And there's insurance involved and vehicle, which was donated, right?
Right. We had to donate the vehicle because we were requiring more insurance that they couldn't get. So yeah, the good news is the county stepped up with that vehicle. Anyway, no, I do believe the safe parking program. Isn't there a state law that the vehicles, I like to see that they're operable. I think that's really important. But what about this 10-year limit? Doesn't the state have something like that, that RVs can't be older than 10 years?
I think it's a state.
Well,
Private, RV property owners.
it's
they're running
it's just a private program. I mean, a private rule
I think so.
for private owners that they can say if your vehicle's over 10 years old, you can't come.
I don't know that law.
Do you know?
Yes, they can. There are some private property owners like RV parks that do have that limitation,
Of 10 years,
whatever.
whatever they want to have, that's something that they're allowed to do. Okay. All right. Well, I think operable is really an important role. And I noticed you had that in the conceptual overview too, that they have to be operable. So I think that's important.
So do you support at the edge of the city in an urban growth boundary, urban reserve type area or countywide? And as I say, when I say countywide, it's for discussion going into it. You know, I'd be that wide open starting with it. And if we don't get there, that's fine too.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out where do we get to include the Gales property? Because I know they're really close. And
Are they in the UGB or the reserve?
They're not.
Yeah, so that's outside.
right. So,
You presumably would specify a certain distance. You could certainly provide a certain distance from an urban growth boundary that would, under an interpretation, could render certain properties
Okay.
eligible.
is that like maybe a mile or something or half a mile?
To the board's discretion.
Right.
Again, based on your own interpretation of how House Bill 2006, if it does apply to the rural lands, just conceptualizing here that, you know, the board it's a permissive law that the board could potentially structure it in a way to demonstrate, you know, how it's equitably applied or appropriately applied. And
So that's a path right there. Yeah.
Can we ask,
Kind of 2.5.
could we ask someone that's in the audience to tell me how far it is to that property?
I think it's the chair's discretion on that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not a public hearing, but if you
No.
want to get more information.
Chuck, do you mind giving us just a bit of testimony on how far it is? Within a mile. Okay, thank you
There we
so
go,
much.
within a mile.
Thank you for being here.
What does the county emergency declaration do for us in terms of making this,
Well, it tells the world that there's no clear guidance, which we already got legally, and we're just proceeding. And it would have a date associated with it if you
asking legal counsel.
I don't believe that by issuing an emergency declaration that it absolves you from any type of state land use laws or any arguments. It certainly doesn't change our legal analysis.
But it is potentially a signal to people who are interested in challenging that, of our rationale for.
It provides an explanation, but whether you do that in an emergency declaration or if we do it by board order, you can certainly do that in the recitals of the board order as well.
I could go for within a mile of a UGB.
Is that a motion? Can I second
Well,
it?
I think we're just giving guidance right now. There's nothing official.
Yeah,
Recommended motion, provide staff direction. Well, I agree with within a mile.
Okay, that's a good starting point.
Also, one consideration, and I welcome him or Peter's input, but staff could come back with two programs. One is within the UGB, and then the second one is within the mile of the UGB, so that if one was challenged, the other one could move forward. So that's an option for consideration.
Adopt them both.
Correct, but have them be two separate either ordinances or board orders, so that if one was challenged, the other one would remain.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense as well. I was almost going to ask you, could you do them both, just so we could look at them both? But I mean, that's a reason to do them both so that we could adopt them both and have the one area to fall back to, even if the other one is contested.
Okay, there's guidance.
Great, and it.
Good discussion.
There will be a hearing, right? There would be a hearing to consider the order or an ordinance on code that establishes safe parking.
It's by board order, so you would not be required to, but I think given the amount of interest in this item, I think it would be recommended.
Yeah, what we can do is, obviously that will be forthcoming. We'll have information that we can share to Eric about the precise area in Redmond and confirm ownership. So to the extent that those questions come up again, that we have real data to offer, what it looks like within a mile, what's the zoning with, we can give you, we can have that data available to the extent the board has questions about what this means spatially across ownership, across zoning. So CDD will work with Eric on that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
So the next item is scheduled for 11:10.
Chair DeBonne, we actually put a notice in our agenda that these are just time estimates, and it does allow us to call public hearings before the time that's noted
Great.
in the agenda.
Okay.
So we can proceed if you choose to.
Yeah, well, let's do that. We'll be able to get through a couple items here pretty quick. And we do have a lunch recess scheduled to reconvene at 1 o'clock. And I would suggest that we do that just to put all the budget items together at 1 o'clock. So at this time, item number 12, a public hearing to consider amendments to Deschutes County Code to modify franchise fees for commercial and non-commercial haulers. This is solid waste. Switching gears.
Good morning, Commissioner DeBonne, Chair DeBonne, and fellow commissioners. My name's Tim Brownell, and I'm the incoming director of solid waste. So this item before you is a public hearing to consider the amendment to the Deschutes County Code. So there was a first and second reading, followed hopefully by the adoption of ordinance number 2023-011, amending the county code sections 13.24.120 and 13.24.130. What this is we're looking to increase the franchise fees that are assessed to the franchise haulers that are incorporated in the collection rates and services that they provide to the unincorporated sections of Deschutes County. The franchise fee has been set within the county code at 3%. It's been at that rate probably since the early 80s. What staff is asking for is an increase in that that franchise fee from 3% to 5%, so that we can expand some of the abatement services and remediation of properties within the county in conjunction with CDD. To put in context, the franchise fees are assigned to the granted franchise haulers throughout the county. The cities have their own franchise fees. They also assess those to their ratepayers. The city of Bend and city of Sisters currently have a rate of 7%. The city of Redmond is adopting, it's recommended that they adopt a rate of 7%. And the city of Lapine is currently at 5%. So the county has been well below the rates that have been charged within the other communities. This increase will generate approximately $240,000 in revenues, of which solid waste and CDD are proposing assigning at least $200,000 to the remediation and abatement of nuisance issues that have seemingly grown significantly in the county over the last number of years. So with that, I will, the impact, just to give a sense of impact of this adjustment, a 2% increase in the rate will generate on an average household producing 65-gallon refuse in a month or on a weekly basis will be a 60-cent per month increase in their rate. For an average commercial generator generating 4 cubic yards of waste in a week, that will impact their rates by approximately $6 per month. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
So if we did have a work session on this, we've heard about this concept as commissioners. This is for the world to hear about it. This is our public hearing on the matter. Any questions from the commissioners?
Can I make one clarification on the draft ordinance that was included in your packets? I just want to note that it was initially June 28th was listed. A revised document has been sent to Brenda with June 21st.
So yeah, this is the meeting that the public hearings held. The date's been changed to today.
Oh, thank you for that.
So at this time, this is a public hearing on the matter to consider the amendments to the Deschutes County franchise fees for commercial and non-commercial solid waste haulers. Is there anybody here to testify on the matter? Is there any remote testimony requests? Okay, so at this time, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. So this is a proposed ordinance in our packet. Is there any other discussion or is there a motion?
Is there any discussion?
I think I've heard enough about this. I'll move first and second reading by title only and emergency adoption of ordinance number 2023-011, amending Deschutes County Code sections 13.24.120 and 13.24.130.
I'll second the motion.
Is there any other discussion? And can we do all three in one motion? First, second reading and adoption?
If we could, let's break it up and let's do
Okay,
first and
sorry
second
about that.
reading by
First and second.
title
Yep.
only, and then we'll do the adoption.
It'll look better in the minutes.
First reading by title only.
I think first and second is what she
First
suggested.
okay. And then emergency adoption. Okay. First and second reading by title only of ordinance number 2023-011, amending Deschutes County Code sections 13.24.120 and 13.24.130.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. At this time, this is the first reading of ordinance number 2023-011, an ordinance amending sections 13.24.120 and 13.24.130 of the Deschutes County Code. And at this time, do I mention emergency adoption? And to be adopted by emergency, okay. And at this time, a second reading of ordinance number 2023-011 and ordinance amending sections 13.24.120, 13.24.130 of the Deschutes County Code and emergency adoption.
And then I move emergency adoption of ordinance number 2023-011, amending Deschutes County Code sections 13-24-120 and 13-24-130.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So this will be good. I know that the solid waste department gets requests for fee waivers for different activities, and community development is trying to help people, and fee waivers are offered sometimes just to make things move forward. So this will be valuable. It's good to know that we've had a low franchise fee for many years, and we're still basically less than others, but it's still money. So I'll acknowledge that. Okay, at this time, item number 13, public hearing. This would be for rate adjustments for waste and recyclables collection and transfer services.
So Chair DeBonne, fellow commissioners, this is a public hearing and then consider approval of Board Order 2023-23 to provide for a 12.5% rate adjustment for waste and recycling collection services provided to the residents in unincorporated Deschutes County by Wilderness Garbage and Recycling, Cascade Disposal, Bend Garbage and Recycling, and High Country Disposal. In addition, it also considers a 9% rate increase for waste and recyclable transfer services provided by Deschutes County to Deschutes County by Deschutes Transfer Company. So what we're looking for is a rate modification to the monthly rates that are paid for by residents and commercial businesses in the unincorporated sections of Deschutes County to the tune of 12.5%. This was worked through and negotiated with the 4 separate hauling franchises, as mentioned before. These increases are driven by 3 primary reasons. One, the county, the solid waste department has increased the disposal fees in this upcoming budget. That represents slightly less than half of this rate modification increase request. The 2% of the franchise fee is also incorporated within that rate modification. So of the 12.5%, about 8% are pass-through costs from the solid waste department services and fees. The remaining 4.5% of this rate request is for operating expenses, increased operating expenses incurred by the haulers. Primarily fuel and personnel costs are the leading drivers of those increases in costs. The Deschutes transfer, which is a 9% rate adjustment request, is primarily driven, that is the transfer of waste from all of the transfer stations, La Pine, Negus, Northwest. Those transfer services are largely fuel and vehicle dependent. So their increasing costs are primarily for, again, some personnel, but largely the fuel rate increases that we've been experiencing over the last couple of years. So relative to the budget impacts, there's on the franchise service fee adjustments, there's no impact on the departmental budget. Those are the fees paid for by the service users. And the funds have been budgeted for the transfer services increase of 9%. That was included in this year's budget proposal from staff. So with that, I will open it up.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, this is
I did want to say something. Sorry, since I've heard some issues in the community with some of our service hasn't been exactly at the standard to which our community is accustomed. I was wondering, how are we addressing that, Tim? I'm so glad you are the incoming director and you've been here for what, a year now?
Yeah.
So you're and I know you ran out to Tumalo and did some pickups to make a difference. So I just feel like it's important that we acknowledge that.
Yeah. So the service issues that the community's been experiencing have been primarily within the Republic Services franchises, which are the Wilderness down in La Pine, High Country Disposal up in Redmond and Sisters, and the distant rural around there, and then Bend Garbage and Recycling, which is just north of Bend and to the east side of the county. We have been discussing with Republic, some of them are service issues, some of them are customer, their ability to reach customer service representatives. So we've been discussing with them those service challenges that they've been having. We are, in fact, increasing our staff this next year to deal with some of those customer related service issues. Additionally, Republic got the requests that they were asking for within this. We brought down the fees that they were requesting. They actually were looking for 16.5% increase in High Country area, 36% increase in Bend Garbage and recycling service area. And the profit margin that's allowed within the county code and under ordinance is between 9 and 12%. We have put their rate of return, operating return, at just under 9%. And we really have pushed them to say if they want to see any higher rate of return, they're going to have to provide better services to the residents of the county, not just county itself, but the county jurisdictions, but also the cities of Bend, City of Redmond, City of Sisters, and LaPine, where they've had some service challenges. So we've tried to put pressure on them on their rate requests to say that we need to see better service before we can grant any further increases to their rates.
Thank you for clarifying.
When I was involved with some of those discussions, and I think it was a function of CDL truck drivers, right? Just getting the next person ready to commit to the route on a regular basis. So we've all been through this, the county departments, plus a lot of the companies out there right now. So hopefully that was just a point in time, and it's just going to get better from here on out.
Yeah, we've seen that they are now fully staffed. We still do see some challenges relative to how the communications through their customer service division works, and that's where we want to see additional improvement for the residents of Deschutes County.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a public hearing on the matter. This is proposed rate adjustments for waste and recyclables collection and transfer services. Is there anybody in the room requesting to testify in this matter? Seeing none, is there anyone online? There are none. So at this time, we will close the public hearing on this matter. I'll acknowledge that the way this is done by order, it's the whole package of all the fees. And this has been done in the past where, even if there's a mid-year change, the whole package just kind of hangs together. So if you need to look up a fee, you can just look at this latest ordinance and the dated items. They'll all be dated July 1st, 2023. So the public hearing has been held and closed. Is there a motion?
Okay.
Big long, yeah.
So I make the motion to approve board order number 2023-023 to provide for, can it be done together then, Kim? There's
Let's do two separate ones.
okay, to provide for a 12.5% rate increase for waste and recyclables collection services provided to residents in unincorporated Deschutes County by Wilderness Garbage and Recycling, Cascade Disposal, Bend Garbage and Recycling, and High Country Disposal.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Question, is this first and second reading? Is that what we're doing? Same thing?
This is a board order, so.
So just a reading, just an adoption.
Just move
So
approval.
this will be it. Okay, so this is a motion to approve this order. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So I do want to acknowledge our partnership with the hauling companies. This is the whole county. Let's all work together on this. And obviously there was a discussion about service levels, but we'll get through that together and provide this great service for everybody. It is cost effective. The whole system, throughput. We know the numbers are good relative to other places in the country even.
And now I'll move approval of board order number 2023-023 to provide for a 9% rate increase for waste and recyclables transfer services provided to Deschutes County by Deschutes Transfer Company.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much. There you go. Photo opportunity. What? Oh, yes, selfie day. I heard that on the radio coming in. Yes, that's right.
People need to be encouraged to take selfies.
Thank you.
There's quite a lot of them.
Okay, at this time, item number 14. So we're ahead of schedule today, which is good. Thank you very much for the folks that have joined us. Second reading of our ordinance for a plan amendment and zone change in approximately 93 acres east of Bend.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Nathaniel Miller, Assistant Planner with Planning Division. The item before us today is a second reading for an ordinance approving a plan amendment and zone change for a 93-acre property east of the city of Bend. The file reference is 247-22-000, 313-ZC, and 314-PA. In your packets is a draft ordinance of 2023-010 with exhibits. These materials have been reviewed by planning staff and by legal counsel. Today's meeting is the second reading, and if approved, this ordinance will be effective 90 days from today's date. Staff is available for any questions. If there are not any questions, the board may move to approve the ordinance as it is written. There is a recommended motion in your agenda packet.
So yeah, we've had the first reading. This is the second reading and possible adoption following. Is there a motion or any discussion?
I move second reading of ordinance number 2023-010 for a plan amendment and zone change for approximately 93 acres east of Bend and north of Highway 20 by title only. See, did I miss anything else?
Second. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. This is second reading of ordinance number 2023-010, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan, to change the comprehensive plan designation for certain property from agriculture to rural residential exception area, and amending Deschutes County Code Title 18 to the Deschutes County zoning map to change the zone designation from certain property from exclusive farm use to multiple use agriculture.
So now I move adoption of ordinance number 2023-010.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Process complete on that one.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
I do want to take this opportunity to mention at one of our AOC steering committee, Association of Oregon County Steering Committee meetings the other day or a week or two ago, they described the DLCD Housing Planning Assistance Grant Program. And this is not necessarily application level, but this is for, a CDD and county, admin level. It sounds like these grant programs would provide opportunities to take a careful look at those lands. The hundreds of acres of lands that we are in the process of rezoning on the east side of the city of Bend, and try to figure out how we ensure the future urbanization of those lands, both ensuring, and in so doing, both ensuring that those property owners get the highest value possible for their property, but also so that we get the most housing possible from those few hundred acres. That there were opportunities to do things like look at urban area reserves, UGB expansions. There was a category for a kind of project called a UGB land exchange, where we've heard from Tia Lewis about how there are all these areas that were brought into the UGB last time that were not as good as the areas that are just to the east of the city of Bend, but those areas that were brought in were zoned MUA or rural residential 10, while the lands that we're now in the process of rezoning were zoned EFU. And if those are still not great places to build, if there's still nothing vertical going on there, then, maybe, short of a UGB expansion, you could swap some of the acres for better acres. So I hope I've mentioned this to Will Groves. I've mentioned this to a couple of city councilors. But I hope that we will take a serious look at this grant program and think about what opportunities it provides us to, plan for and orderly develop those hundreds of acres on the east side of Bend.
Commissioner, I'd just like to acknowledge, this is private property. Yes, there's going to be a financial incentive for development and urbanization if the property owner chooses that, but I wouldn't presuppose how to tell somebody to develop their own property. There's rules in Oregon already, so.
You can say whatever you want. It is in the interest of the county and in the interest of the city of Bend to provide for the inclusion of those lands in the future city of Bend.
Yep. Well, that's the difference of view of the world here, which is fine. I'm just acknowledging it.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this time, we are going to take a lunch recess. We're going to get back and run through a whole bunch of budget items and agenda items for the rest of the day. So 11:05, but we'll be reconvening at 1 o'clock.